Good morning, it's Lori from Unique Eats and Garden Treats here. It's 6:30 in the morning on June 14th. We finally got a bit of rain, so I thought it'd be a good time to do a garden video to show you where our gardens are at this season. Our gardens got put in a little bit late this year, as I've been recovering from spine surgery, but they're pretty much mostly all in now, and they are growing, even if they are still a little bit on the small side. So we're entering into the main growing area for fruit and vegetables. This garden here has mostly bush beans along the side, pumpkins and squash in the middle, and tomatoes growing up over the trellises. Hopefully, once these tomatoes grow up over the trellises, the solar lights look a little bit less like a carnival. The goal was to have a nice lit pathway underneath the arches of the plants as they're growing. On the left, there are lots of raised boxes now, 3 14-foot long ones. They're 20 inches high. Again, moving forward, trying to make things a little bit easier for me as a gardener, and my back issues, which will be with me forever. Raising things up off the ground is a really big help. When we come around the trellis area, on the left is the main berry patch. Also houses asparagus in here. So we have blueberries, several rows of strawberries, which have done really well this year, currants and other berries, and then asparagus down at the back by the compost. Also threw some pumpkins in the ground because there was a bit of extra room back there. New to the gardens this year are 2 new animal coops. The first one on the left is our summer coop for our chickens, and it has raised gardens built around the outside of it. This coop was built by Better Way Sheds. We didn't build it ourselves, but I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Inside the coop you'll see Henny, Penny, and Lenny, our 3 black copper Moran hens. Perennial gardens on the outside of this whole area, and raised bed gardens again, 3 boards high for vegetables around the outside of the coop. So the idea of having raised gardens around the chickens was also for integrated pest management, so that the chickens would take care of the insects that landed on the plants and flew into their space. The chickens had a bit of a different idea about what the plants meant this spring. They thought it meant food for them, so we had to have a few discussions, and I had to revamp my plans a little bit in order to be able to save some plants from some hungry chickens. Not their fault. You know, it's green stuff. They love green stuff, and so it was an oversight on my part. This year, all of our gardens are planted with the vegetable gardens are planted with flowers and herbs as companions and other vegetables. We had a really bad pest year last year, lost a lot of stuff to pest damage, and so this year I'm trying to confuse our pests and attract more pollinators, but also attract more predator bugs to take care of my pests. So I'm trying to create an environment for that. Shout out to my good friend Ari for coming down and helping build not only the coop but also the raised boxes. Couldn't have done it without her. This year has been particularly challenging for gardening for me as I'm recovering, but I love it, so had to be done, and here we are. It's our asparagus. First year harvesting asparagus this year. Didn't harvest too heavily because we wanted to make sure that the health of the plants was maintained, but it was great to have some out of our own garden. Behind me, and I'll just turn around so that you can see it, is a bit of an experiment. And these 3 raised beds have potatoes in them, and they're planted in 4-inch compost inside these boxes, and then as the plants have grown up, they have been layered off with grass shavings, grass clippings, and also straw. And apparently when it's harvest time, you just pull off all the grass and the straw, and there your potatoes are ready for harvesting. So I thought I would give it a shot and see how it works. So far the plants seem to be pretty happy. They're growing like crazy. They grew through the grass clippings. I think they really like the nitrogen. Also growing as companions here we have pole beans, and there is alyssum in the ground and nasturtiums as well, and then some more companions over here nearby to attract those bugs that we want in the garden and hopefully get rid of some of the ones that we don't. These perennial gardens are kind of in the, I don't know, in that June lull where the spring stuff is all done now, and so there's not a lot of color happening in the perennials. There is some, but this time of year there seems to always be a bit of a gap. So at some point I'll have to address that and put in more plants that they're actually flowering this time of year. I did throw some vegetables in here this year too. There's some pole beans growing down at the bottom of this bird trellis, and hopefully they'll grow up to the top and that will look lovely. Over behind our dome building we have our bee yard. I'm not going to actually go into the bee yard, but I will take you over to the gate to show you what's going on over there. We started last year with 2 colonies, and this year we added 2 more colonies, so now we have 4. The 2 larger ones on the left are the colonies from last year, and the 2 smaller ones on the right are the new ones. The pink and blue one, unfortunately, for some reason came queenless, but we did manage to remedy that by giving those bees some frames of eggs and brood from one of our established colonies, and they were able to build themselves grow themselves a new queen, which we saw on Friday. So we know that that colony is now queen right, and it's all good. Behind the dome building here is the bee garden. This is mostly perennials and some self-seeding annuals. I don't do very much in this garden. I very rarely water it. It's quite far from my tap. But everything that grows in here is food for bees, and I don't really weed it either, except for the grasses. I leave the dandelions, I leave the clover, because those are also food for bees. That's their garden. And my dad and my sister made me some lovely signs for Christmas, and this is one of them. Beware. It's very cute. Just panning around now, I'll show you from the back corner what the property is looking like. So there's still lots of open field space at the back here. The high tunnel, we've taken the plastic off it now, and it's covered now with a shade cloth and a screen. There's been crops growing in there since April, broccoli and peas and such, and I'll take you in there. There's a lot of stuff about ready to be harvested, and we have also harvested some already. Perennial gardens. The perennial gardens wrapping the chicken coop, and the vegetable gardens wrapping the chicken coop. And in front of the chicken coop is one of our other new buildings for this year. We call this one the cottage. It's a summer building again. It's not winterized. So and it houses quail right now. And the quail that are living in here will join the main flock in the fall when it's too cold for them to stay out here anymore. That's one of the newer gardens. See, it looks still pretty bare. There's buckwheat growing in that big empty space there, as well as a pollinator patch of flowers. This is all baking beans, bush beans, and pole beans. And once they have established themselves really well in here, I will also cover the ground. You probably have noticed that the ground in almost all garden spaces is covered with straw. And that's because soil does not like to be naked, and if you don't cover it, it will find a way to cover itself. The garlic patch number 1 is doing pretty great. I have lots of scapes to harvest now. Let's come in and show you one of those garlic scapes. It's time for them to be chopped off. I think this garlic also plays an important role with the pest management, because a lot of pests don't like garlic. In the low tunnels, again, these crops were started at the end of April, and there is broccoli and cauliflower and lettuce and a few other things growing in these. They're being protected from the cabbage moth from laying eggs in them, but also they would just wilt up and die in the sun heat that we're having right now. So they need this protection, an extra bit of shade in order to be able to actually do something. So the quail cottage is an 11 by almost 4 foot building. The back of the cottage has a playhouse in it that I bought off of Amazon and painted it in my cute outdoor bird colors. And so they have an indoor space that they can go into to get out of the weather, or if they just want to be in a quiet space. And then they have an outdoor run here that has plastic panels along the bottom outside of the hardware cloth, because we did have some predators try to take some chunks out of these guys, and so now they are a lot more secure and nothing has been able to get in and get at them since we beefed up this building a little bit more. We also have solar lights out here, which I think helps keep away some of the predators that will come in the night. Behind the greenhouse here is a perennial flower garden. I did throw some tiny little annual plants in here that I'm hoping will survive. It's been so dry. The ground is like concrete here, so we'll see if they're able to make it through or not. So we'll come back through here beside the greenhouse now into a relatively new space. Some of this has been here since last year. This box has been here, it houses garlic this year, and it's going to get raised up even higher for next year. But I also put in grow bags that have a variety of different things, from potatoes to cucumbers, and some hexagon steel raised gardens that kind of reminds me a bit of honeycomb. Again, just having the vegetables raised up off the ground is a really big help. I have a little garden stool that I can pull right up. It's perfect height to do work and I don't have to bend over. We've got lettuce and more, actually these are runner beans that are growing up along here. This gets a little bit of shelter, so the lettuce is quite happy here. Coming along. Peppers are all in pots this year for the most part. It's just easier to manage them. They do like to be hot. They do like to be somewhat dry, not overly wet. So having them in pots, it makes it a little bit easier to manage. So I have more of the grow bags here. These ones have some leftover potatoes that are still not up, that will get filled up with soil as they begin to grow. Hardy kiwi that is growing over top of my trellis here, and a variety of raised gardens. I'll come around to the front and do a view so that you can see what it looks like for this whole garden. And this garden wasn't really planned, it just kind of came into being as one of these raised gardens areas, but I think it's going to work out pretty good. The walnut trees are pretty close to here, so having things off the ground will help. And also it gets a bit of shade, so being able to control the moisture levels in these containers is going to help keep these vegetables happy. So we're at the high tunnel now. This was covered in plastic up until about a few weeks ago, and my mom, who is wonderful, took this screen and sewed it together for me so that we were able to give these plants a bit of protection from the bugs and the elements. These are a lot of peas and lettuce, broccoli, kohlrabi, cauliflower. There's a very interesting looking one in here called Veronica. It's a green cauliflower that is just starting to come up. I think that's pretty cool, and that's what it looks like. It has this weird kind of looks like it came out of the sea look, which is pretty neat. There's lots of peas in here that are about ready to be harvested too, so I'll have to get in here and do some work really soon. The front of the greenhouse. The greenhouse is pretty empty right now, but in another week it'll be full of trays, as I'll be starting to do another planting of vegetables that will be going in succession when some of these early vegetables are finished. Perennial gardens, they're going to be another, I want to say, probably 2 or 3 years before they actually start to hit their wow factor of maturity. Some of them are getting to be quite lovely now, but they still have a lot of spread to do, and they haven't done that yet. I've got little solar bee lights in this area lighting up the path, which is, you know, just enough light so that you don't trip and break your neck in when it's dark out. But it's kind of like a mood thing. I'll try to get out here in the night and see if I can take a video of what all the lights. I have a lot of solar lights all through the property this year, and see if it works out. I'm not sure if my camera is good enough to capture that, but we'll see. So these perennial gardens all come lead around to our screened in gazebo area where we can get away from the bugs, because the mosquitoes are pretty darn horrendous here, and they will eat you alive even in the middle of the day. I'm out here taking this video with a ton of bug spray on just because I'm standing fairly still and walking slowly, and they are all around me. This is a new garden over here this year. It's got melons in the raised garden, and you'll see this silver, it almost looks like I put foil on the ground here. It's actually a plastic. It has black underneath, and I had a handy. I'm killing off the grass because I'm taking the path and I'm going to weave it around our garden here and out the other end towards the 2 coops. We have another screened in area so that we can enjoy some outside time without being eaten alive. And again, I haven't got all my plants in the ground yet. I'm still growing some seedlings that are out that are not in the ground, and hopefully soon I'll be able to take care of those and get those in. So we'll quickly just go over to the side of the building. I don't want to keep these videos too long. I live in the country with pretty crummy internet, and it'll take forever for this video to upload. I don't actually have the technology to take smaller videos and splice them together, unfortunately. Someday I'll get around to that, just like I'll get around to finishing my website, which has been, you know, live but not finished for a number of months now. Another perennial garden. I absolutely love this clematis. It's like it's a big showstopper every single year. It never fails. Doesn't matter the weather conditions. Here it is, lots of flowers, and it's saying look at me, and rightfully so. It's a very, very nice showpiece. And this year, well, at this time of year when there's not a lot of color in the garden, it's a really nice thing to see. I have other clematis too that they just don't seem to be quite as showy as that one. I just finished chopping back all of the spring bulb flowers that were finished and dying off, so that the perennials and the few little annuals that'll pop in here have some room to spread out over the summer. My poor sand cherry had an aphid infestation. I think I've taken care of it now, but it's still a little bit droopy. I think I'm gonna have to stake that one up. I have no idea what half of these flowers are. I have a tendency to like things and pick them up and throw them in the ground and forget what they are. So, I mean, it's an iris. It's a pretty kind of purple iris. I couldn't tell you what the name was. And then some foxglove going down here. Lots of solar lights along this area too, just to bring some mood in the evening. Again, not a lot of color going on right now, but in another couple of weeks I'll take another video of this area, and it will be full of color, and these plants will be filled right out into the space that I made for them by cutting back the spring bulbs. This grapevine's pretty happy this year. It's one of our table grapes, so we should be able to get some grapes for eating again this year. The orchard is doing as well as it can in the no rain conditions. It had a fantastic flowering time. There was no rain during that time. We had all these extra bees, plus the wild bees that were here, and so pollination was just fantastic. My little plum tree this year is just covered in plums, and very excited about that because it's the first time. My cherry trees on the other side of the orchard also have cherries on them for the first time since we planted them, so I'm really excited about that. I'll have to make sure that I get them netted at the proper time. A lot of it is a learning experience, and you learn as you go, and so hopefully trial and error doesn't have too many errors when it comes to the cherries, because I've been really looking forward to having those. A view of the house and the paths from standing in the backyard. As we move back towards the front of the property. I didn't take you back along the raspberries and into the actual orchard because there's really not that much to see right now. And the raspberries, I haven't had a chance to get in there and do work yet. As we go into the last part of the garden and the main quail aviary and the front yard gardens, I will start a new video, as this one is getting to be quite long. It'll be part B of this series. So as we will move towards the skate, we'll end this video here and we'll move on to the next one.